Distinguished guests, dear survivors, friends, good morning. I'm so happy that you tuned into Facebook Live to hear my story. And my name is Immaculee Songa, aka Mukantaganira Immaculee. Before I decided to take my father and my brother's names to keep them close to me. I'm a survivor and first-hand witness of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. In my story, I will call it the genocide, so that when you hear genocide, you know I'm talking about 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. It is my core and duty to share my surviving story, and that of over 1 million, more than 1 million voices whose lives were cut short by the evil during the 19 genocide against the Tutsi. It is equally important that I and other survivors of the genocide tell the story of Rwanda's dark time in history. 27 years ago today, I was living in Rwanda, Kigali, when on April 7, 1994, myself and millions across our country began a traumatizing journey that will forever connect to us. The meticulously planned and savagely executed march to our death, the genocide. 27 years later, it is with a heavy heart that I tell my story. Surviving wasn't for me. I wasn't intended to survive and to live after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. As I crossed and faced and was found by militia and military holding machetes, guns, paddles, and that killed the other people I was with, but did not kill me. For 6 times, I was in front of the killers, or they found me in the bushes, but they didn't kill me. Since then, it has been clear to me that surviving is a privilege which entails obligations. And those obligations are to tell the story, our stories, and the story of Rwanda, so that we give a lesson to the world that genocide is not happening overnight. It's planned. People plan the genocide for years until they get to it. So friends, this is a lesson for you, so that you remember there was this lady who told you about the genocide in Rwanda, and don't not neglect it. Growing up, I witnessed the killing of Tutsis in 1959, 1963, 1967, 1973, and the years leading up to the 1980s. At a very young age, I lived in Kaduha, the southern province of Rwanda, a region that was desperately affected by civil unrest in these years in Rwanda. Often during my childhood, my parents, my siblings, and I spent night in bushes, in forests, or in churches, hiding from arsonists who were determined to erase the ethnic Tutsi. Tutsi fled to neighboring countries such as Uganda, Burundi, Congo, Tanzania, and lived in camps or settled in those countries. My parents' house was burned twice during my childhood. Our cows were killed and meat taken to the killers' homes. It was such a nightmare to live in Rwanda at that time. And I never understood why my parents never decided to leave and move to other countries. We were in perpetual fear as the killings and burning of houses became common in our territory, Gikongoro. My siblings and I urged my parents to relocate to a region in the south, which we thought was safer. We were mistaken. Can you please show the picture on the PowerPoint? This is Clarissa. I will be talking my story. And this is Raisa and Clarice together. And here you have Beata, who was like a sister to me. She was a very good friend. She was with me all the time. You have Clarissa and Raisa. And please remember that these are surviving photos, because we couldn't, I was lucky to find these photos in the backyard of our house, because my husband liked to make photos, and we had piles of photos. So these were found in the yard. And this is my brother, Marude's brother, I would be talking about. This is the mass grave where my brother lies right now. Those are my girls. My girls. My husband. This is a memorial site for my husband, where my husband is buried. And here is at the embassy of United States in Rwanda. They have like a plaque for the employees. Now, imagine, this was my life. These were my children. It was my husband, my family, the few photos I could find. But you can imagine the happiness I had before 1994 genocide. It's like yours, isn't it? But all of that was taken away when the genocide happened. My husband cared for me so much. There is a disease, that's an example, there is a disease called malaria. And if you are bitten by an infected mosquito, you got that disease. So because my husband wanted to protect me, he would go around the bed to ensure the bed net was well secured in all corners. If it happened, he forgot to do it, when he woke up during the night, he will go around and do it. I'm forever grateful to him. When he came from work, sometimes he will find me in the garden, in the yard, making sure that, the flowers were taken care of, or if they were healthy, wherever he passed by, he will see flowers and he will bring those to me, or he will find plants and he will bring those to me just because he knew I loved flowers. And my husband wasn't the only person who cared for me. My old brother, Straton Gakwaya, whom I took his last name, kept the harmony in the family. We love to go to our parents' house on special weekend like Easter or Christmas, and we will sit inside the compound and start a fire and to keep us warm. And my oldest brother will teach us songs and we will sing together. It was just empowering. And if I was pregnant, he was a priest, the general treasurer of a diocese. He will come in Kigali, he will say a mass for me every morning, just to make sure that, I was loved and cared for. So then one day, my family is gone, you become a widow, you lose your beautiful daughters, your loving brother, your father, your mother, your other siblings, your best friends. Like I had two friends, like one was on the PowerPoint, and we were always together. I visited their friends with them, they visited my friends with me. When we had a funeral, when we have a wedding, they were always there for me. They were more than sisters to me. And those, like one of them told me before the genocide, Immaculee, she was visiting in Kigali. And she said, Immaculee, what will happen if one of us die? We have such friendship that it's so special that if someone died, we won't find any other friend like us. So we, as a Tutsi growing up, I witnessed killing in 59, 62, and the years leading to 19s. At a very young age, my parents' house was burned twice. and we lived in perpetual fear. Despite Rwandan tumultuous history from the 1960s and onward, we built a life and surrounded ourselves with a network and support system that empowered our resolve to endure. I was a happy wife and mother, surrounded. Our home was filled with laughter and voices, and we like to have people in our house. But through the trials and tribulations preceding the genocide, this support was the key to sustaining ourselves as the country changed around us. All of that would change. I found myself lost in a chaos, aware of my impending mortality. So you can imagine our lives, and we lived in a country where the government was dividing its inhabitants, and we were the few people, the few Tutsi that were in the country, we tried to have a life and surround ourselves, with a system that will help us to survive and to live in that country. And to brainwash Hutu's mind, the Hutu government waged a no-out propaganda campaign of political hate speech to incite Hutus to hate Tutsis. They would use inflammatory speech to turn neighbors, friends, co-workers, family members into enemies. The notion of being nobodies began to take a common form in the culture. We were called Inyenzi, Inzoka, meaning cockroaches and snakes. By the beginning of 1993, we were fully aware of our new identity as non-person. We began to hear loudly that hit lists of Tutsi were being compiled and handed over to militias. Numbers were assigned to houses. Training were supervised by the Presidential Guard and the French soldiers. We would see buses filled up with militia heading to Bugesera, and truck of French soldiers behind them, going to training in Bugesera, a region in the southwest of Rwanda. And this was preparing to the genocide. Every passing minute on the national radio, we would hear calls for Hutus to go and walk, which meant to go and kill Tutsis. Here I must emphasize the power of words and hate speech. The longer these powerful voices repeated their messages on the radio, the more what seems unfeasible, unthinkable became a reality, and the more our fate became inevitable. The more the streets were filling up with militia, young and old, preparing, planning, writing, marching, and waiting for the killing. Make no mistake, at the time people were randomly being killed, manifestations of hate taking place, the air was palpable and ready to combust. Tutsis in Rwanda and the international community understood what was taking place. To address this, the United Nations Assistance Mission in Rwanda was created, and they arrived in Rwanda with 25 military forces. We thought we were safer now. We trusted them. The Rwandan military or foreign affairs of that time say publicly on the national radio that the UNAMIR, the United Nations Assistance Mission, came to Rwanda to protect civilians. So that gave us a peace of mind, and we trusted them. We believe in its mission and power. We know, like when we hear United Nations, we know this is an institution that is very powerful. So we trusted them, but we were mistaken. As soon as the genocide started, they were called to withdraw their forces from Rwanda. They took all foreigners and left us alone. We were left on our own. As General Dallaire, who was the commander-in-chief in Rwanda for the United Nations mission, said on our 25th commemoration, powerful nations did not have interest in Rwanda, so they delayed naming the atrocity as a genocide, because there is a convention with the United Nations when the countries decide and say, name like killing as a genocide, the country have to intervene. So they made that decision to not intervene and delayed the calling of what was happening in Rwanda, while bodies were flowing in rivers around the neighboring countries, and when the people on the field, like General Dallaire, were telling them that this was happening, the genocide was happening in Rwanda, United Nations, or countries, that make United Nations, decided to delay the acceptance and the naming it as a genocide. And that's how, many people died. Although killing continued at an alarming rate, and we feared for our lives, we still trusted UNAMIR. During Easter break time in 1994, I was becoming unsafe in Kigali. My husband and I decided to send our daughters, Clarissa and Raisa, to a Hutu friends who was married to my cousin. We thought if something happened to us, they would survive. That was the culture in the country. During civil unrest, children were never killed. So we thought these girls will survive if we died. And so in the past, children were not targeted. When President Habyarimana plane was shut down on April 7, it was like the crash heard around the country that spared our dam. Our guard knocked at the bedroom. In Rwanda, that time the life was, we had a decent life. My husband worked for the US mission in Rwanda, and I worked for this company, and I had a good job. So we had a decent life, and we could afford to have a guard because of the situation in Rwanda, and we could afford to have people to help us at home. My husband and I, so when the guard came us and told us that the plane that was carrying President Habyarimana to Rwanda, back to Rwanda, was shut down, it was like, oh my God, so that's the end of all Tutsis. He told us he had military on the road saying that all Tutsi must die. So we looked by the window and saw military truck with guns turned in all directions. And this was like a few minutes after the plane was shut down. To say that how the genocide was planned, like we will not say that, if a plane was shut down and 30 minutes later, the presidential guard, military are on the road everywhere with guns turned in all directions. So when our guy told us all Tutsi we were going to die, we were so scared, and we knew it was our end. We became immobilized and petrified, not knowing what to do, where to go. My husband pleaded with me to be calm and to trust in God. He reminded me that a site of UNAMIR was 5 minutes from our home, and we trusted UNAMIR. We waited, but we were mistaken. On the morning of April 7, 1994, the Presidential Guard and two extremist parties in the countries had set up roadblock, barricades, and started a slaughter. The first to target were those who could oppose the genocide, those who were in the opposition, the Prime Minister, some minister who could oppose the genocide. They were the first target. And my brother, Father Straton Gakwaya, a former general treasurer of the diocese, was in Kigali accompanying his bishop, who was traveling the next morning to Rome. So he spent the night in Kigali because they were going to the airport early in the morning. My brother was killed early in the morning on April 7th. He was the first one in the family to be killed. And my husband and I left our home that morning to go hide at a Hutu friend. Share Kampayana was our friend who lived close to us, and we went to his house. 2 hours later, 3 men friends came to give us condolences for my brother. Like the genocide, people were just so confused. They didn't know what was happening. And so people learned of my brother's death. They came to give me condolences. But then there was an extremist Hutu who came to the house with militia, and they were looking for us. So they beat those 3 guys they were 2 Hutus and 1 Tutsi. They beat them, they came in the house, and they told the guy to let us go. They were coming to get us and kill us. We didn't deserve life. And this guy gave them he had just came from London for my mission, and he had dollars with him, so he gave them dollars, and all the equipment he had, they left, promising to come back. On April 11, my husband and I left Kigali. We decided with that family, we talked, the militia had come to the house twice, and it was important that we leave Kigali. So we decided to leave Kigali, and we got into Kamonyi, which is like maybe 20 minutes from Kigali. We spent the night at a parish where I knew a priest who was, who knew my brother. So I told them that I'm the sister of Father Stratton. They gave us a shelter. The next morning, we walked from Kamonyi to Gitarama. This is like 30 minutes on a car. We walked. My son, who was 1 year old, on my back. We walked, we got in Gitarama, we jumped on a truck, and we got into Ruhango, which is in the south, where my children were. When we got there, the guy who was hosting them told us that things have become very bad, and that it wasn't, like kind of safe for us to take the kids. If you take them, they're going to kill all of you. But if you leave them here, maybe they will survive. And you can't stay here. So we left Ruhango and went to Butare, a city in the south. When we got into Butare, our friend, we were going to stay to spend the night at our friend, who was a professor, a university professor, and he was a very good friend of the governor of Butare, who was the only Tutsi governor. So the governor called the house and said, Gaitan, this guy was named Gaitan, and say, Gaitan, we're not going to leave Butare. We have to fight. There is no militia who will get into this city. I will protect the city. I talked with the commander-in-chief of the province. He's with us. We're going to protect the city and the region. So we decided to stay in Butare and not to go to Burundi, because our goal was to get in Burundi, because my husband has family in Burundi. He had lived in Burundi. And so he told me, if we go into Burundi, we will be safe, because, if I get there, I will go to the embassy, to the US embassy, and get a job, because, I will be a refugee and I work for them. And we have my family, so we're going to stay with my family. So in Butare, the governor convinced us to not leave the city and just stay, because he needed support. So we stayed in Butare, and we did not escape, leaving Butare. But in Ruhango, going back to Ruhango, when I left my children, and, it was very difficult. It was kind of like a poignant journey, like when you are leaving your children, this is a war, and we didn't know it was a genocide yet. So leaving them was very hard, but my husband convinced me this is the best decision to do. We wanted these kids to be safe, to not be killed. If we take them with us, they are going to kill all of us. But if we die, they will survive. That was our reasoning. Sorry about the story. So we couldn't leave Butare when everything started to, when the militia and the government send militia on buses to Butare, knowing that Butare had a governor Tutsi, they had to send reinforcements. So they sent people, militia and military, to Butare to help the militia in Butare so that the genocide can start there. So at a certain point, when the governor started hiding in Butare, and when they killed a lady who was in the royal family, we knew that time that it was done. That was the end. So the entire house was shaking. We were in this house. We were 20 people in this house, and we decided we need to try to go to Burundi. We go to a gas station. We fill our car with gas, and then by the time we were almost leaving the gas station, the person whom the Gaitan has contracted and said, we can pay you if you take us to the front, to the border to Burundi, called Gaitan and say, hey, there is no way. I took someone in the morning, they killed these people with me, and they took them out of the car, they killed them. I'm not gonna take you. So we 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 didn't have any other choice than staying in Butare. And so they would come to the house, and they didn't kill us until they knew everybody was in the house. On April 27, 1994, at 9 a.m., my son was crying hysterically, and my heart dictated me to go outside so that militia don't know that there were people inside. Even though it was dangerous, I risked by being seen outside by militia, and I decided to go outside. But so like we have created the prayer group before the genocide with the situation we were in. We were praying to give ourselves some comfort and some strength. And I was outside, praying, and I had a car, a truck coming and stopping in front of the door. And they had a slogan. They were saying, Hutu power, Tutsi must die. I was outside reading my Bible. And the passage I was reading was, you will not fear the terror of the night. Psalm 91, verses 5, you will not fear the terror of the night, not the arrow that flies the day. Although 1,000 may fail at your side, 10,000 at your right, but nothing will get near you. That was the passage I was reading, the verse I was reading that morning. And so, like reading that Bible, I had some hope that this militia will not kill us. So they came. As soon as I had them, that I had to go back inside and react to the door, and everyone had to find refuge in the hallway. And militia came. They put down the door, and they came in, and they started, asking for our identities. And there was this lady who looked like, they thought maybe she was a Hutu, but they told her, "You crazy girl, aren't you Hutu?" And she said, "I'm Tutsi." So they took all of us, they were military, they were beating us and saying, march fast. We don't have time to waste. Go fast. And there was my best friend who has her daughter, and Isabel. She was my goddaughter, and she loved me so much. We loved each other, and she would jump at me and go to her mother. And during the walk to the forest, and a militarist told her, girl, you go and stay in line. So she went to her mother, and her mother was put in, they first called her husband. They say, Gaetan, the forest, go in front and go first. And then on our way, they put his wife in front of all of us. So his wife was number one. We got into the forest, and they started killing us. And Kaitesi, my friend, was number one to be killed. And so they put us in line. They started killing us, and I was number 8 in the line. When the military guy got to me, I told him, I was kind of shaking. I had money with me, like in the house when we were feeling for our death. And sometimes in military and militia coming to the house, and we would jump outside running. And because someone told us, because we weren't all together, they could not kill us. They wanted all of us to be in the house. So my husband has given me, he had some money, he was an accountant, and he gave me some money. And so I told them, the military, that I had money. If he doesn't kill me, I have money, I'm gonna give it to you. So he pushed me aside and walked toward the other people. But as he put me aside, because I guess God wanted me to leave, I walked backward in the forest. I moved backward in the forest. I went deep in the forest and sit under a tree. I had my son on my tummy, so that he was, I could feel that he was hypnotized and he was scared, and he did not move. He did not cry like he was crying that morning. And so we were in the forest. They finished the killing of everyone I was with. And as soon as they finished, they said, let's go back in the house and get rid of the dirty bodies. So they went back inside, and there in the forest, I started praying. I pray, I told, God, my family was devoted to you. My family gave you, my brother gave himself to you. And my father has a cross at the house. We went to mass every morning. God, give me a favor. Be with me in this forest and make that it rain. And like within 30 minutes in the forest, I knew like dogs were barking in the forest, and they were body everywhere, decomposing, and so like within 30 minutes there was heavy rain that engulfed the forest. And and I had like like a cloth on my hip, and just a t-shirt and a towel in which I had my son. That's how I spent 3 months during the genocide. And so I told myself, you're not going to stay in the forest because dog will eat you, or militia will come here and kill you. So I decided to leave the forest and go back. During that rain, I decided to go back to the house. As soon as I got there, the people who worked for this guy, the people like the housekeeper and the person who the cook, they told me that they called me Marian, which means godmother, godmother. That's how they called me in the house. If you stay here, militia took the key of the house. If you stay here, they are going to kill you. They are coming back, they said. So I left and went to different houses, neighboring in the neighboring, and no one would take me in. So I went knocked at one house, and I went to the other. At the fourth one, I didn't knock, but I jumped on a gate, a 2 meters gate, with my son on my back. I don't know if it's not a miracle. I don't know how I jumped on the gate, but I jumped and got inside the compound. And I know the lady, I have gone to school with her, so I told myself maybe she can be compassionate and hide me. They hid me for three nights. And then one morning, the next morning, the husband came and they asked me to come into the living room. I went, and he told me, we can't keep you here, because if we keep you here, you're gonna die. So where do you want to go? And I say, maybe in Luango where my children are. So the husband took me in his car. We got to one first road broke. The road broke, we just opened for him. And later I heard that he was in the planning of the killing in Butari. So he took me and left me to the prefecture. So instead of, finding something for me to go, he just wanted me to leave the house. And he left me in front of the governor's office, And I was there for 3 nights. One, there was no food, there was nothing. There were refugees around 1,000. We lived in fear in front of the governor's office. It was just horrible, There was one person I worked with at the coffee office, and he saw me, and I went to him and said, hey, where are you staying? Can you please take me with you? And he said, no, I can't, because there are 7 roadblocks from here to where I'm staying, but I will bring you food for the child. So he brought me every morning milk and bread, and then he left. But there on the second day, there were 2 military came. They were looking for me. They came like through the refugees were sitting, and they came and got to me and say, hey, are you Immaculee? And I say, yes. And are you the person who were at the Gaetan's house? I looked around and I didn't know what to say. And so they told me, like, we're coming back tomorrow. When they came back, they took me and they told me they were going to kill me, and they took me in. There was a couple houses around the prefecture. They put me down, and they took my dignity over there. They took my son on the floor. They put my son on the floor, and they one by one, and they finished. They left. They told me they were coming back. From that time, I was like dead. Um, I mean, like, what do you do in that situation? Everyone is gone. You are in the forest. You go to this family. They keep you for 2 nights. They let you go. You go to a prefecture where there are refugees, and people recognize that you are the woman Tutsi, who was at Gaytan. Gaytan was called the second person of the province, just because he was a very good friend. He had studied in Canada, and he was a very good friend of the governor. So on the second day, luckily, someone stopped at the governor's office, and I recognized him. He was the cousin of a very good friend of mine in Kigali. And I walked to him and said, "Can you please take me at your house?" And he said, "I can't take you. There are so many roadblocks. But if you find a way to get there, you can hide at my place." I mean, how do I get there? So, like, within days, the governor was killed, and then they named a new governor. The new governor was a director of a coffee project, and I worked for the coffee office. He used to come to my office, and we have just bought 2 cars for his project. So he came, he was, when I went to his office, he told me, "What do you need?" And I say, "Nothing else but safety. Can you please help me to get to Antoine's house?" And he was like, he looked in his pocket, he took out $5,000, no, 5,000 Rwandan francs, but he could not give them to me because right there was the commander-in-chief of the new commander-in-chief got to his office, and they told me to go out. So I went out. From that time, they put the military at his door so that people don't come to his office. But for some reason, like, something was pushing me. So I saw him, like, go in the afternoon. I saw him getting out of his office and heading to the car. I jumped and went to him and said, "Governor, can you please take me? Can you please take me to Antoine's house?" And he said, "Do you have belongings?" I say, "No, there is no belonging." "Okay, get in the car." So I got in the car, and he took me to a neighbor to that guy. So I went there, and the guy took me to Antoine's house. So when I was walking from his house to Antoine's house, people saw me, and they knew someone was at Antoine's house. When I got at Antoine's house, there were other people there, and other women who were hiding there. So the militia will come and they'll come and ask us to go outside, and they will count us, and they will take some of us, and they will never come back. And they will come the next day and take someone else. And when someone who had recognized me, someone who had come to me and say, "Are you Stratton?" who was my brother, Stratton's sister? And I told her, "I am." So she came to me and said, "Immaculee, tonight is your turn. You are going to be killed. You have to leave the house." And she took my son for one night, and I stayed in the bushes. And the following day, she came and said, "I think you're not going to leave this village. They are going to kill you. The word I hear is that you are one of the few people who are still on this village." So she told me, if you have money, I know, like, there was a very good friend of my brother who was the general treasurer of Butare. And she told me, "I know Mubirigi Felicien, who was the general treasurer of that diocese, is still alive. And I know he was a very good friend of your brother. I can go." This was like an hour and a half of walk. So she walked and told him that, I was about to die. And Mubirigi sent me money. It was 60,000 Rwandan franc that time. So the money was used, I called the guy who was hiding me, and I say, "Here is the money. If you can manage to do business, buy, they were doing alcohol selling or brochettes like the meat. And so he had stopped doing it, and I gave him money, and I gave money to the lady who had brought the money so that she can buy an identity for me, a Hutu identity. She went to her cousins and she bought the identity. She gave it to me. But by the time, because like the Mubirigi Felicien, the General Treasurer has told me in a note that he sent to me during the genocide that if I can get to where he is, I can hide there. So he told this lady, if she has paper, bring her. And the lady went to get my identity. She paid for it, and I paid for the girl who was staying there, who was also a target. So we bought new identities, and we're ready to move to go to the General Treasurer's office where he was hiding. And by that time it was June. So the militia and military knew that the RPF Motanyi was almost getting in Butare, and they started leaving the city. And so when they left the city, the guy who was hiding us left too. So what do? We went to the bushes and we stayed there. By 7 p.m. he had told us, if you want to hide in the bushes because militia can kill you, and by tonight go to this guy who was married to a Tutsi. So we went to that guy, and by 8 p.m. we heard a strong noise, and we heard like people making noise, and they came into the house, and I saw the guy who was hiding us with a machine gun. They have come to kill us so that there is no witness after them. So they started, calling everybody to come in the hallway. We all came, and then suddenly we heard a voice, a gun shooting around, close to nearby where we were. And they were so scared because they knew the RPF Motanyi, the forces that were fighting to stop the genocide when United Nations had, kind of left us alone, and the RPF was fighting to stop the genocide. So they know if the RPF forces were getting the village, they were feeling the RPF. So they left. They jumped and left the house and the compound, and so from that morning we stayed. We were so scared. We didn't know if they will not come back, because we sent somebody. Someone told us that he knew that there is RPF on the next village. So I think we have heard the noise and the gunshot, at the next village. So I told us, if I go and tell them there are Tutsis hiding here, they are going to come and rescue you. So we sent him. I gave him some money. We sent him, and the next morning, in the morning, we saw someone say, they are here, they are here. And we looked by the window. There were military who had the uniform different than the one we know. And we say, oh my God, tears were streaming my face. We were asking, who are they? Who are they? Who are you talking about? And tears, when I heard that the RPF in Motanyi were the ones who had come to rescue us, tears were streaming my face. And I think they were tears of joy, thinking, you survived, but also hoping that my husband and my children were still alive, because my children had stayed to my cousin and her husband, who were from the north, and whom people say he was an Interahamwe. And my husband was in Butare. I knew he had said no one will kill him with a machete. And I hoped that he left the killing place and we get into Burundi. But for some reason, I hoped they were still alive. And I think that was the reason that was giving me the energy and the courage to survive. So when the genocide ended and they took us to camp, I will go to camp and look around every day. There were new people. I will go and check. When I got in Kigali and stayed in this house where there were many people and who also survived, when I heard steps outside, I thought it was my husband. Even in the middle of the night, I will wake up and go by the window and look if it wasn't my husband. So until in 2016, when we went to the place where they killed them and found him with the other people I was with. I remember the shoes, like when you are resuming the body of your loved ones, especially the children, and you see their shoes, because the body decomposed and the shoes are still there. So it was like that image stays in my mind. And then in 2017, I went uh, to find the body of my girls, and it was just a long process. Was a very difficult process, and to find them, and you are hoping you will find something that is connected and still together, but you find bones and there's not even a skeleton, and you sit there and you feel like this is the end of my world. But at the beginning, I said that we survived for a reason. The reason is we have a mission to teach the world that genocide is not something you can reach to your country, to your people, to the world. It's something that you will never understand until you are into it. So, friends, this is something that I don't wish for you. Work for peace. Try to fight and be an instrument of peace. Because no one wants anybody, any country. And let's say genocide never again on our planet. But genocide is bad. It's unspeakable. It's unthinkable. There's no way to explain it. And you only understand it when you lived it, you went into it, you experienced it. Friends, I call you, I thank you for committing to listen to my story. This tells me that you are committing to peace. You are good citizens of the world, and you have a responsibility to make sure the world, and this happens only when we consider our neighbor, our friends as friends, real friends, and we wish good to them. When we serve those around us, serve your neighbor. I remember when I got into this country and I moved to where I live right now, and when we moved to this house, and my neighbor, she was an elderly person, and she came and knocked at my door and told me, "You have parked in my parking spot. You need to move it." And I went and moved it. But slowly, like, with my culture, we help the elders. So when I saw her carrying groceries, I would help her to take them inside. When we took snow off the car, I will go and took snow off her car. And she became a very good friend, and she would talk about us to her family, and they will hug me when they saw me. We can transform this world. We can do good to our people. We can be the difference. We can do a good impact in our society and make sure that the genocide never again in our planet. Thank you. So thank you again to tuning in. Join here on Wednesday, April 14th at 10 a.m. Central Time to hear another survivor, Peter Magaibo, a refugee from Sudan, and the lost boy will be sharing his story at 10 a.m. on April 14th. Thank you again for following Facebook Live with the museum. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And if you have questions, I'm ready for that.
All right, we do have a couple. Thank you so much for sharing your story. The first one is, what is Rwanda like today?
Okay. So Rwanda has transformed in a way I would never, or anybody who has survived the genocide would never thought. Like today, people, the government, has helped the population to reconcile and to live together, and the identity that separated us was removed from our card. So the identity card in Rwanda right now says Rwandan. In the past, we say Hutu, Tutsi, Etwa, because the extremist government wanted to differentiate people. But today we have one identity. We are one Rwanda. We are one people, and people in Rwanda are determined to build the country. And like, for example, Rwanda is the cleanest country in Africa. I think the second country you can do business in Rwanda. In 3 days, you have registration to do business. And if you see the picture of Rwanda today, you will be amazed. Rwanda has transformed in a way I would never expect it. Hope I answered your question.
You did. So how did people learn to live together after this?
By teaching, like when I give my testimony today, I'm calling you to love one another, to love your neighbor, to love your family, to love the people you know, because that's very important. That's what Rwanda teaches. Rwanda teaches reconciliation. You can see like on a village, people living together, and there's no way to explain it until you get there. I have a friend, probably she's on the listening to us, but when I came to speak at the museum, she was crying and she asked me to go with me to Rwanda. We went. She can tell you, she's a testimony of how Rwanda transformed. Of course, there are memorial sites, there are mass graves, and there are, things and buildings, and that remind you that the genocide happened in Rwanda, but the country is healing. Most of the Rwandans are here and ready to transform Rwanda and to teach the world the reason of Rwanda.
Do you identify as Tutsi now, and do you feel comfortable doing so?
I didn't get the question right.
Do you identify as Tutsi now, or?
It's very difficult today. Very difficult because the identity says Rwandan, and you can see somebody is very tall, and you can maybe guess this is a Tutsi, but you're not going to confirm because you don't know. The identity says Rwandan.
What is it like for you as a survivor to go back to Rwanda?
Well, okay, so when I go back to Rwanda, it's difficult because it reminds me of the genocide. It reminds me that my friend Genevieve is not there. My family is not there. My brother is not there. But it amuses me to travel, go to Gisenyi, go to Butare, and see what Rwanda has accomplished. Of course, our people are the 1 million people who died are the sacrifice for Rwanda to rebuild and to become a new country that preach unity, that preach reconciliation, and that calls people to togetherness to rebuild the country. So yeah, we are a hospitable country. I have my husband's cousins. They are always helping me to travel and I have friends there too. So yeah, I go very often actually. It's just when I want to relax and take my vacation. My vacation is in Rwanda. It's not anywhere else because I want to relax, but with people I speak the same language with, and the people I have the same culture. I go to weddings, I go to church there. I feel immortalized and, renewed, and yeah, it's beautiful.
That's wonderful. That I believe is all the questions we have. So I want to thank you again so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.